Testing microphone, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. But hello. Oh yeah, my thing is off. My camera. Okay. Well, here I am. But now why I do not hear you. Hello, hello. I do not hear you. Don't hear you. Don't hear you.
Okay, now you can hear us.
Yes,
We're
I
muted.
do.
I didn't realize we were muting. How you doing?
Baruch
How are
Hashem.
you? Rav Fink.
Baruch Hashem. And how are you guys?
Baruch Hashem. Rav Fink, there's a bit of a change happening at Shevach that I won't be in charge of the Zooms and registration anymore. I'll have to put you in touch with a woman named Sarah Kolp who'll be doing it.
Okay.
I'll help out. Keep me on your email what you do.
Impending disaster. That's what you're telling me?
I hope not. I'll be here for July to continue assisting doing it, whatever. It should be a smooth transition. But you'll have to I agree. Oy Vezmir. No. We'll be positive.
Okay.
We invite positive. We invite good.
Okay, I'll try to be positive. But okay, we can always hope for the best. So tell me again her name.
Aye. Okay.
What are you doing next besides talking with your Ima?
I have to call my Ima.
Yeah.
And then I have to then call the hospital for a few of the appointments that she was calling me about. And then I'm meeting with Edie now, and then I'm going to school. Wow, that's and I was supposed to go somewhere with my granddaughter at 4:00, but she canceled on me this morning. So but have to go to the music museum. The music museum.
Oh, I've been there. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I've been there. She doesn't wake up.
I cried at the end when they showed the three-dimensional of the Betamik.
Oh, the virtual tour. Yeah. She was never. That was her free time, but I wanted to.
I'm to a concert tonight. You are?
I need to leave this room.
Jerusalem theater.
What's going on with you?
Hashem
came to me.
Rabbi Fink's on. He's hearing. He's hearing about your call. I'm sure that you'd like to come, Rav Fink. There's going to be. Hello,
Yes.
Judy's inviting you to a concert.
A concert?
Well, there's a concert I'm going to tonight. The music academy or something, a conservatory in Yerushalayim. They're having an end of the year concert at the Jerusalem Theater. It's going to be woodwind instruments. I'm literally looking forward to it.
And fell on the bed. And had she been sleeping on that bed,
Fantastic.
You would think that that's called music. As compared to other concerts.
Well, I'm familiar with the conservatory in Har Nof, and if it's them, I think it is, then it's surely going to be good.
Bezrat Hashem, yes.
Enough, not Mishkanot Hasha'ananim.
Could be them. They also have excellent teachers, so I'm confident it'll be good. Tov, hello.
Shalom.
It's time for our regular Halacha class. What I want to talk about today is what I want to focus on is Shechianu. Last week we spoke about Shechianu on seasonal fruits and vegetables. Today I want to focus on Shechianu on new clothing, a new dress, a new suit of clothes. Newly acquired items, an automobile, a house, big stuff like that. This is what we're going to focus on today. But as usual, before we come to that material, which I planned for, let me ask you if you have any questions of a halachic nature you wish to begin with. We're going to plunge right into Shechianu. Okay. Let me get the stuff on the screen. Why doesn't it not say share here? Why does it say share? Oh, here's a share. And okay. Wow. Okay, now I'm sharing. What we learned last week was that according to most of the poskim, according to the mainstream poskim, The bracha shechianu on seasonal fruits is rishus, optional, not required, and therefore we saw since the days of the Gaonim, shortly after the close of the Gemara in Bavel, in Babylonia, we saw that in many Jewish communities, people simply skipping that bracha, since it's optional in the first place, and demands Simchas Halev. And if you don't experience Simchas Halev, then of course there's no room for the bracha. And what people are skipping it. On the other hand, we saw last week that it's quite correct and quite proper that if you do experience Simcha the first time you see or the first time you eat a seasonal fruit, or vegetable, it's correct. It's correct to make the bracha. All this we saw last week. Now let's turn to objects that you acquire. We begin with the Shulchan Aruch and the Orach Chaim. The Shulchan Aruch talks about Bana Bayat Hadash. If you built a new house for yourself, O Kana Kelim Chadashim, or you bought new Kelim. Now, in modern Hebrew, in Israeli Hebrew, the word Kelim means utensils. But in Rabbinic Hebrew, the word kelim has a broader meaning. In Rabbinic Hebrew, in the Mishnah, Gemara, down to the Shulchan Aruch, and contemporary poskim, the word kelim can refer to utensils, as indeed, but it also refers to clothing. Clothing are also called kelim. So if you built a new house for yourself, or you bought new clothing, new articles of clothing or other utensils. And remember that the Hebrew word kana in modern Israeli Hebrew means to buy, to purchase. But again, in Rabbinic Hebrew, the meaning is much broader. In Rabbinic Hebrew, the word kana means to acquire. This doesn't have to be through a purchase. It can be an inheritance. It can be a gift. There are many ways you can acquire ownership. You can barter. There are many ways you can acquire ownership of something. All of that is called koneh in Rabbinic Hebrew, even though the meaning is limited in modern Israeli Hebrew to purchases. So you build yourself a new house, or you acquire, whether it's through a sale or some other mechanism of acquisition, you acquire new clothing, new utensils, an air conditioner, an automobile, whatever. Afilu hayalo kayotze be'ela techila, even if you already had stuff like that before, even though you have a closet full of dresses, even though you have a closet full of suits, even though you already own a fleet of automobiles, you bought another one. Even though you have a house, but now you built a summer house, a dacha for your vacations. Well, even though it's just an additional house, an additional kli, oh, shekana, v'chazer v'kana, or you acquired something, you got rid of it, you sold it, you gave it away, and then you bought it back again. You put it back again. In each of these cases, you make the bracha shechianu v'kimanu v'giyanu l'zman hazeh. Okay, so the point of the Shulchan Aruch is fairly simple and straightforward. Any acquisition calls for shechianu. V'lav dafka chadashim, and it doesn't have to be the acquisition of a new item. Huadin Yishanim, even if you buy a used automobile, even if you buy a second-hand house, you're buying it from the previous owner of the house. It doesn't have to be a new house. You don't have to be the first resident. It doesn't have to be new clothing that no one ever wore before. It can all be second-hand. It doesn't make any difference. Im chadashim lo, if for you it's a new acquisition, Shelo haya olam kodem olam. You never had such before. V'lo amru chadashim elo lafuki im muchran v'chazu v'kanan. If it's new for you and you didn't have this specific item in your possession before, you make a shechianu. This eliminates the scenario which I just mentioned a few minutes ago. If you sell an air conditioner, you sell clothing or give it away, and then buy it back again, well, exactly that air conditioner, exactly that suit of clothes, exactly that dress you previously owned, no bracha on that. It has to be new for you. Okay, that's fairly simple and straightforward. Shechianu is called for newly acquired items. The Magen Avram, whom we've met many times, one of the two principal commentaries on the Orach Chaim, on the Shulchan Aruch, talks about what exactly are kelim chadashim. What do we mean by newly acquired items? Well, he says, and this is a melody we're familiar with from last week, Lo ra'iti nizarim bazeh. I don't see that people are making this bracha. I don't see that people are careful about it. Well, we know this melody from last week. Last week it had to do with seasonal fruits. Now it has to do with newly acquired objects, items. People apparently are omitting this bracha. Efsher, maybe the reason is Somchim al masha katvu b'tosafot. Maybe they're relying upon the Tosafot, who quotes Rav Shrira Gaon from the days of the Gaonim. Ein mevachim kevan she'eino ba mizman lizman. Maybe the reason people are not making shechianu a newly acquired property, newly acquired objects, is because we're not talking about a regularly occurring periodic event. It's not like seasonal fruits, which every spring, every fall, depending upon when the harvest is for different things, it's not like seasonal fruits, which come at a regular schedule, more or less. Newly acquired automobile, newly acquired house, no particular schedule to it. And after all, the bracha, Shechianu Kimanu Lazman Hazeh, the text of the bracha implies that we're making the bracha on something which comes at certain times of the year. Certain fruits, certain vegetables become available at certain seasons. Oh, that's not true with a newly acquired house, a newly acquired set of clothes. Maybe that's the reason. Bein and midi, the asab is man. After all, if we're going to make the bracha, the higiyanu lazman hazeh, we're going to make the bracha that we are praising God for preserving us and keeping us to arrive at this season, at this time of year. It has to have something of a seasonal nature to it. The bracha has to have something of a periodic nature to it. Yamim tovim come at a regular schedule. New seasonal fruits and vegetables come at a regular schedule. Buying a new air conditioner, buying new clothing, no particular schedule to it at all. Maybe that's the reason people omit the bracha. And Makol Makom, nonetheless, the melody repeats itself. Ein lahakel. Nonetheless, you shouldn't be lenient. You should be making the bracha. After all, the Shulchan Aruch says nothing about seasonality when we're making the bracha a newly acquired property, and therefore you should be making the bracha. We saw this melody last week. People aren't making the bracha shechianu. There is an explanation for why they're not doing it, but really, we should be doing it, and the Magen Avram, like last week, encourage us to do it. Venerally, it seems to me that the bracha is correct, dafka, only on klei tashmish. The bracha is correct only on newly acquired objects newly acquired property, newly acquired items that you are going to use. Oh, aval, al sfarim chadashim. But if you buy new sfarim, and in rabbinic Hebrew, sfarim means sifrei kodesh, a chumash, or sefer Torah, a chumash, or a sefer Torah, Mishnah, Rambam, Gemara, art scroll. If you're buying sifrei kodesh, eino mavarich, no bracha should be recited on sifrei kodesh, no bracha on sfarim. Why? Because mitzvos lav lenos nitnu. Because mitzvahs were not given to us for our hana'ah. Mitzvahs were not given to us for our benefit, for our pleasure, for our use. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us mitzvahs because Kadosh Baruch Hu wants us to do it. It's an obligation. The mitzvahs are obligations which fall upon us. They are not for our pleasure. They are not for our enjoyment. They're not, of course, the more simcha you have in the performance of a mitzvah, the better. But even if you have no simcha at all, even if you do not like this mitzvah or that mitzvah, still you should stride forward and do it. It's the kiyum of the mitzvah. The fulfillment does not depend upon your simcha. Your simcha only magnifies the value of the mitzvah. Now, since mitzvahs were not given to us by HaKadosh Baruch Hu for our enjoyment, for our pleasure, for our hana'ah, therefore, there's a rule throughout the length and breadth of Torah, illuminated on the screen at the moment, mitzvahs lav lenos nitnu. When you are fulfilling a mitzvah, the rules of personal benefit, the rules of personal enjoyment do not apply. You might enjoy the svarim that you bought, but the enjoyment you have does not have the halachic status of enjoyment. I'll give you one example. You'll understand how it works. Then you'll be able to multiply examples endlessly. Imagine someone, chas v'shalom, is in a period of life when they are in mourning. Well, in Avelus, someone who is in a period in his or her life when they're in mourning is not supposed to engage in simcha activities. Therefore, among the things they should not do is buy a new clothing, a new dress, or something which will provide simcha for them. Buying a pair of socks or buying undergarments are probably not a source of great simcha. So that's okay for someone who is in mourning, but a major purchase, the kind of clothing that gives you simcha, well, people in mourning shouldn't, unless, of course, we're talking about a mitzvah garment. Oh, a mitzvah garment. If a man buys a talis, a new talis, even though it gives him simcha, he's allowed to do it during the mourning period because although he happens to have simcha from the mitzvah, that's of course commendable, that's praiseworthy, that's the way it's supposed to work, but it doesn't have the halachic status of being simcha. Okay, well, buying svarim is a mitzvah. Just buying them is a mitzvah, all the more so when you learn from them. And therefore, that does not have the halachic status of simcha, and therefore there's no room for the bracha shechianu. Similarly, if you buy any other mitzvah object, you buy matzah for Leil HaSeder. Well, it doesn't matter what the mitzvah object is. You buy a beautiful esrog. It doesn't, as much simcha as you might have, the simcha does not count because it's a mitzvah object you have bought. Well, the approach of the Magen Avraham is clear. In fact, people are omitting this bracha. The reason is probably because it's not periodic, it's not seasonal. Still, you should make the bracha, and the bracha depends upon simcha. And if you have no simcha, either because you're just not happy about it, or because it's a mitzvah object, and then it doesn't have the halachic status of being simcha, then of course no bracha at all. That's the Mechaber. That's Rabbi Yosef Karo in the Shulchan Aruch. Now let's look at the Ramah, the Ashkenaz annotator on the Shulchan Aruch. He points out Binyan Shechianu Ubirkas Atofu Meitiv. He's writing about these two brachas, Shechianu V'Kiyamanu V'Gyan L'Zman Hazeh, and Bochat Hashem Elkeinu Melech Haolam Hatov V'Hameitiv. These are two parallel brachas which apply in almost identical cases. What's the whole difference between them? The only difference between these two brachas is if it's your unique, individual, personal simcha, you make shechianu. If, however, it's a joint simcha with someone else, then it's hatov v'hametiv. You get a lovely bottle of wine, you spend 500 shekels for it, and it's really good, and you have a lot of simcha. If you're drinking it by yourself, shechianu. If you're sharing it with a friend, the bracha is hatov v'hametiv. Got the difference? Now, as far as these two brachas are concerned, the Ramah writes, Yesh shekatvu shenahagu lahakel bebracha zo she'ena chova el rishus. These two brachot are rishus. We know this melody from last week. These brachas are optional. You're not obligated to say them. Umizeh nitpashet sherabba mekilim beila brachas. And many people are omitting these two brachas. That's what the Ramah says in his notes on the Shulchan Aruch. Now the story becomes a little bit more complicated because before the Ramah wrote the Ashkenaz notes on the Shulchan Aruch, earlier in his life, he wrote the Darchei Moshe. The Darchei Moshe goes in the order of the Shulchan Aruch, paragraph by paragraph through the Shulchan Aruch, and the Darchei Moshe assembles in an encyclopedic way Minhagei Ashkenaz, which differ from the opinions of the Shulchan Aruch. This longer encyclopedic work, the Darchei Moshe, got crystallized, distilled into the Ashkenaz notes on the Shulchan Aruch. So when you're learning something by the Ramah in the Shulchan Aruch, an Ashkenaz note, if it's not so clear what he means, the first place to look for more explanation, the first place to look for a fuller explanation is in the earlier book he wrote, the Darchei Moshe, where you get stuff explained at greater length and in greater detail. Well, in the earlier book he wrote, Nir Eli, he wrote, it seems to me, the Afal Gav, the Metshuvas Rashba, even though the Rashba implies, like Rav Shira Gaon, that these brachas are not obligatory, even though the sources imply that these brachas, Shechianu, Hatov v'Hametiv, are not obligatory. Makom makom, yesh l'nhog levarech aleim gedivri haposkim d'sfir shul Hashem chova. Nonetheless, we should embrace the opinion of those poskim who hold that they are obligatory. The Ramah has contradicted himself. In his earlier book, he says we should embrace the opinion that these brachas are obligatory. But later in life, when he came to write the Shulchan Aruch, he apparently changed his mind, and he wrote these brachas are only optional. Well, we learn from this that there are examples, indeed there are plenty of examples, of poskim who change their mind in the course of time. when the Rav changes his mind in the course of time, and you're allowed to do that. I mean, of course, I hope that any serious person will be constantly revisiting their ideas, constantly revisiting, and sometimes you might realize a different opinion is better. Here's a footnote of vast importance. Here comes the footnote. Control F11 to open up the footnote window for a moment. I hope we're all on Unix and a Unix system. The students come to a halacha class. Students attend a halacha class. Students study halacha, hoping to find out what to do or what not to do. And then you discover in a very frustrating way that, well, while you thought you're going to learn what to do and what not to do, in fact, what you're learning is, well, different opinions, and it's not so clear, and there are different ways of understanding it, and it's not so obvious what you're supposed to do or what you're not supposed to do. Well, that's the nature of Torah, and once one overcomes the hump, once one overcomes the resistance to the unclarity which is inherent in halacha. Once you overcome that resistance, then you'll be able to fly. Then you'll be able to engage in much more serious study, hopelessly thinking that there's one single correct answer about what to do and what not to do is inevitably frustrating and wrong. That's the end of the footnote. You can toggle back to the main text now. The rabbis changed their mind. For example, in the Igris Moshe, Rav Moshe Feinstein, he changed his mind hundreds of times. You read his opinion in volume 1, you read his opinion in volume 3, all of a sudden he changed his mind. As his son pointed out, every time someone asked Rav Moshe Feinstein a question, in his mind, he began with the fundamental first principles and in his mind worked out the solution again. And he didn't always follow the same path of reasoning. He came to different conclusions at different times. It seems to me that the single most popular, the single most influential book in Hilchah Shabbos is the Sefer Shmirat Shabbat Kilchata, which is available in 3 editions. Well, actually, you buy it today. You can only buy the 3rd edition, but I'm fortunate enough to have on my shelf the 1st edition, the 2nd edition, and the 3rd edition. And boy, oh boy, did he change his mind from one edition to the next. Not surprisingly, always in the same direction to get more strict and more stricter and stricter as he went to the 2nd and eventually the 3rd edition. He passed away before there's a 4th edition. One can only wonder what would have been in that. All of this opens the question of whether or not the Rav has the power. Does the Rav have the authority to nullify, to cancel, to eliminate his earlier opinion? When the Rav changes his mind, does that eliminate his earlier opinion and we can no longer rely upon it? Or when the Rav changes his mind, do we now have a machlokas? Just like between 2 different rabbis, we have a machlokas between the older Rav Neuwirth and the younger Rav Neuwirth. A machlokas, in which case we're free to choose which opinion we want. Now, the resolution of this question is fairly simple and straightforward. But to understand the resolution of this question, I must tell you a story. Here comes the story. The Rambam wrote in the Mishnah Torah, he wrote in the Mishnah Torah that if you're walking along, minding your own business in the shuk, in Mahane Yehuda, and you see on the ground threads that look like they're intended for tzitzis, four threads, one much longer than the other, and it looks like it's for tzitzis, and it's the right length for tzitzis, and one is the longer one, and three are the shorter, and you find it in a place where the halacha is kol hamotzei harezeh shelo, finders keepers. You find it in a situation where it's impossible to restore it to the person who lost it, finders keepers. Now the question arises, finders keepers, it's yours, you picked it up. Can you use it for your own talus? The Rambam says, yes, you could use it for your own talus, because who would have strings of that length, three one length, the fourth one longer? It looks like, of course, they were made. Of course, these threads were made for the mitzvah of tzitzis. Well, what else could they have been made for? And you found them. It's finders keepers. You could use it for your own talus. Now, when the Mishnah Torah was published, back in those days, before printing, when the manuscripts were a team of scribes were busy copying manuscripts and sending them all over the world, all over the Jewish world, when the Mishnah Torah arrived in southern France, where the Balei Tosafot lived, those Ashkenaz rabbis in the south of France were unhappy with some of the halachas, some of the decisions in the Mishnah Torah, and they wrote letters to the Rambam, and it's called the Tshuvot L'Chachmei Provence. There's a whole collection of them, and the Rambam wrote back answers. This is why I paskin this way. This is why I paskin that way. And the Ravid, one of the rabbis of southern France, then added notes to the Mishnah Torah, where we Ashkenaz rabbis disagree with the psak, and we hold otherwise, like this, like this. Well, one of the questions they asked the Rambam was, why did you say those tzitzis can be used? Why did you say those threads can be used for the talus? You cannot know that they were made l'shem mitzvah. You cannot know them. We're talking about a mitzvah min haTorah. You have to be strict and not. It's finders keepers, but you can't use it for the mitzvah because there's no way to know that they were spun. The threads were spun for the purpose of the mitzvah. And the Rambam wrote back to them, Hatzedek imachem. You guys are right. Taknu et anusach shel Mishnah Torah. Please correct the text of the Mishnah Torah that you have. And of course, you buy today a copy of the Mishnah Torah, and it says that the tzitzis, the threads are finders keepers, but you cannot use them for a talus. And we know about this whole story because the Mefarshim, the commentaries on the Mishnah Torah, tell the whole story with the original text and the changed text, and indeed the question of the Chachmei Tzorfat and the answer of the Rambam are available readily available in print. So we know the whole story. The Rambam changed his mind. He was convinced by the Chachmei Tzorfat that he made a mistake, and he corrected it. The Gra, the Gaon Vilna, in his Bi'ur, in his commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, says, Hadin im harambam k'moshe chashav b'tchila. The Rambam was right the first time around. And the Chachmei Tzorfat deceived him, pulled the wool over his eyes, confused him, and he was right the first time around. Well, according to the Gra, the Rambam did not have the capacity. The Rambam did not have the power. The Rambam did not have the authority to eliminate his earlier opinion. All the Rambam could do was create a machlokas between the younger Rambam and the older Rambam. Two Rishonim, two great rabbinic authorities, the young Rambam and the older Rambam, disagreeing with each other, and we have to decide which is the correct opinion in the Gra, paskined like the original opinion of the Rambam. You can use the tzitzis for a talus. Well, we learn from this that if the Rav changes his mind, he does not cancel, he does not eliminate, he does not nullify his original opinion. Both opinions stand, and like any other machlokes, it doesn't matter whether the machlokes is between two chachamim or a machlokes within one chacham who changed his mind. We have to decide which is the opinion we are going to embrace. Unless, of course, it's, oh, I said what I said because they gave me false information. I said what I said was based on false information that was given me, and now that I have the true information, of course the psak has to be changed. Well, if the original psak was a blunder based on false information, then of course that cannot stand. But if the original decision was based on the Rav's reasoned conclusion, based on knowledge and understanding of the sources, that opinion stands even though the Rav changed his mind. Okay, so Ramah changed his mind in the Shulchan Aruch. He says the bracha is reshus. Earlier in his life, he thought it was chova. Both opinions exist. As we saw last week, the mainstream, the majority view is reshus, optional. Now let's see what the Mishnah Brura has to say about this. You build a new house. Similarly, if you buy a house, I mean, you don't have to build it with your own hands. You know, when it says in the Torah, when it says in Nach, Habayit Asher Bana Shlomo, the Beis Hamikdash, which Shlomo built, it doesn't mean that he built the whole thing brick on top of brick. It doesn't mean that he was the stonemason. It means he had it done. He arranged for the building of the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore we're not talking necessarily about a house you build yourself, do it yourself. Even if you just have a contractor do it or you buy a ready-made house, it's all the same. Vidafka kishabana o kana latzma. But all this is true only if you built the house yourself, do it yourself, or you bought the house for your single, unique, personal residence. But if you have partners in the house, you're going to have roommates who are also going to be living in the house. Then you need the other bracha because more than one person is involved in the simcha. You have partners who joined together, financing, building the house. They're going to be living there together. Al-Kain, therefore, of course, therefore, he says, Kahal, a congregation, Shabana o Kanu Beit Knesset, a congregation which built a new synagogue or bought a building to use as a synagogue. Ya'amod Ashatz, the Chazan should stand up, Yevarech B'Kol Ram, and the Chazan should make the bracha out loud for everyone in the congregation, Hatov HaMeitiv, not Shechianu, because the Beit Knesset is not for one person's personal individual enjoyment. It's for the whole Kehillah, and therefore the correct bracha is not Shechianu, but rather Hatov HaMeitiv. In the Bir Halacha, he goes on and explains, Im yesh lo isha ubanim, if you have a wife and children, that's no different in concept than having partners in buying the house. It could be that on the title deed, it says it's your house, the head of the household, but really it's for the whole family living there together. The bracha is Hatov Metiv, not Shechianu, if it's for the family or for partners who joins together in financing the building or for the congregation as a whole. As soon as you have more than one person benefiting from the newly acquired thing, then Hatova Meitiv is the correct bracha. That's what the Mishnah Brura says. Ben Ish Chai, the great Rav of Baghdad, one generation before the Mishnah Brura, Bana bayit chadash, o kana bayit banui me'acharim, mevorech shechianu. Ben Ish Chai says shechianu is the correct bracha. He doesn't mention the possibility of a tova metiv. Now, it's chronologically wrong, but I'm saying he's disagreeing with the Mishnah Berurah, right? He lives a generation earlier than the Mishnah Berurah, but they disagree with each other. According to the Mishnah Berurah, you have to choose the correct bracha, whether it's a unique person living in the house by himself or by herself, or whether multiple people going to be living in the house. That will determine which of the two brachas to make. According to Ben Ish Chai, Shechianu is only correct. Nowadays, people omit this bracha. Instead, instead of the bracha nowadays, people are making a seuda, making a festive meal, inviting their friends, their relatives, their neighbors, whoever, inviting to a festive meal, and this festive meal celebrating the new house that was built or purchased. There's sources for this idea. Therefore, this Suda is a Sudis mitzvah. Yilbash Balabayit Beged Chadash, and the person who built the house, the person who bought the house, should wear a new set of clothing at this festive meal, and he should make a shechianu, and the shechianu will cover the new garment that he or she is wearing, and will also cover the house. That's what the Ben Ish Chai says. Shechianu, and only shechianu is correct. Nowadays, for big purchases, people omit the bracha. What you should do instead is put on a new garment and make the bracha on the new garment and include the house. And one does that at a Suda, at a festive meal, to thank God for having reached the time when you can have this new house. Now, we've seen the Mishnah Berurah's approach. We've seen the Ben Ish Chai, the great Sephardic authority. Now, let's see what the great Hasidic rabbi has to say about the issue. The Seder, Brachot Birchot HaNehanin, was written by the Baal HaTanya, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe. Let's see what he has to say about this. These are his words. Mivachim al beged chashuv, shelibo sameach bo. The bracha is to be pronounced only on a significant, important garment where you have joy in your heart. As I said before, a new pair of socks or undergarments, well, I cannot speak for you, but for me, and I just like to think that everyone in the world is just like me, no great simcha there. Ve'im hu ani v'sameach behem yivarech. Of course, what is a very special acquisition and a source of great joy for a poor person might be irrelevant for a rich person. Ashir gadol, someone who's very wealthy, shekana bigadim chashuvin, eino sameach behem. A very wealthy person could spend a few $1,000s on a set of clothing, and well, it's just routine, and it's just what we do. Nothing special there. Well, it depends upon your simcha, and even though other people might not experience simcha with such and such an acquisition, if you're a poor person, for example, or for any other reason, if you experience simcha salev, it's correct to make the bracha. But then he adds, b'medinot eila, in our territory, he lived in Northern Europe. Noagim shafilu ani einu mevarech al chaluk u'minalim kayotze b'hem. We, he meant the Hasidim, do not make this bracha on any kind of new clothing or footwear. Clothing, we omit the bracha, the Rebbe writes. Aval al shar klei tashmishadam, but on other items that you're going to use, the air conditioner, the automobile, the Ninja air fryer, afilu kli kesef v'zahav, even If it's silver or gold, ein nohagim levarech klal. We absolutely make no brachas on anything aside from clothing, and even clothing. We in general don't do it, but surely not on an air conditioner, surely not on any other object that you buy. Lo b'kniyatam, lo b'tashmisham. We don't make the bracha when you buy it. We don't make the bracha the first time you use it. V'chein ikar. That is the principal practice. And therefore, the Hasidic view, according to the Balatanya anyway, is to always omit the bracha. There's some room for it in clothing, not much, and outside of clothing, definitely not. Okay, now we know that according to Rov Minyan, according to the mainstream poskim, the bracha is omitted. Now, up to this point, we've not spoken about how to define those items which get the bracha if you're going to follow the view that you should make the bracha. Let's see how the poskim define what does get the bracha if you're going to be making the bracha. Al davar she'enu chashuv kol kach, the Shulchan Aruch says on an item which is not terribly important, kagon chaluk, like an apron, or min alim, or shoes, anpalot, or slippers, house shoes. Ein levarech alehem, no bracha on garments which are not very chashuv. Unless, of course, you're poor, and for you, a new pair of shoes is a great thing, then you do make the bracha. The Ramah adds, the Ramah says, well, of course, we don't make these brachas anymore. Well, I don't know if we ever did, but surely, since the close of the Gemara, we've not been making these brachas, and therefore, even if you're poor and very happy that you got a new set of clothes, no bracha. Haminhag lomar lamisha lovesh beged chadash tivalei tischadesh. You see someone who has a new garment. How do you greet that person? If it's Shabbos, you say good Shabbos. If it's Yontif, you say good Yontif. Incidentally, it's not obvious to me why people say good Shabbos. The Mishnah Brura says that there are two correct brachas. You can choose from two correct brachas when you meet someone on Shabbos. The two correct brachas are Shabbat Tov or Shabbat Shalom. Now, why good Shabbos in my neighborhood has become the standard greeting is a little bit of a mystery to me. But in any event, you meet someone who has a new set of clothes, you greet them by saying, Tivalei v'titchadesh. Tivalei, use the garment, wear it out, use the garment, wear it out, titchadesh, and renew it again, then get another new one. That's the greeting that you make, acknowledging, oh, what a beautiful suit of clothes, what a beautiful dress. Tivalei, titchadesh. And of course, if it's a woman, you'd have to, well, you don't speak to women, do you? But a woman would say to another woman, Tivali v'titchachi. Yesh mishakatav, but regarding this, ein lamar kein b'minalim. We don't say it for shoes. You don't bless people for having a new pair of shoes. O bigadim nasim orot, or any leather garment. It's not the shoes, it's the leather. Anything made out of leather does not get a blessing. The imkain, because if it's a leather garment, leather shoes, you had to kill an animal for that. To make the shoes or to make the garment. And it says in Sefer Tehillim, Tov Hashem lakol, Rachamav al kol ma'asav. Kadosh Baruch Hu has rachamim on all the creatures that he created. So we shouldn't be happy that an animal had to be killed in order to make a pair of leather shoes or a leather garment. No bracha on that. Hine atam chalush is a weak reason. I don't think it's right. Makom Rabbi Makpidim, nonetheless, many people are strict on this issue and do not extend a bracha to people who are wearing new leather garments or new leather shoes. Let's take this idea one step further. The Magen Avram wrote leather garments, leather garments, afilu tme'ah, even if the leather comes from a treif animal. Kagon, for example, Fe Yud Aleph, B'Lashon Ashkenaz in Yiddish. Now, what is Fe Yud Aleph in Lashon Ashkenaz? In modern Yiddish, and the Yiddish that I'm familiar with is only 19th and 20th century Yiddish. Is there such a thing as 21st century Yiddish? I don't know. But the Yiddish I'm familiar with is only modern Yiddish. And in modern Yiddish, there is a word fi, similar to the German word fi. In German, it's spelled with a V, fi, so pronounced with an F. But fi in German and modern Yiddish just means cattle. And cattle, cows, that's a kosher animal. Why? I'm mystified by why the Magen Avram says behemoth tamea, a treif animal, like a fi. Fi means cattle. That's not treif. You can shecht it, right? So I'm wondering in my mind what the Yiddish word fi or the German word fi, they're identical. I'm wondering what they meant in the 17th century when the Magen Avram wrote what he wrote. Well, fortunately, the Grimm brothers, everyone familiar with the Grimm brothers? The Grimm brothers wrote a book of fairy tales. You don't know the Grimm fairy tales? Oh, Snow White, okay. Sleeping Beauty, these are all Grimm fairy tales. The Grimm brothers were probably the greatest lexicographers, writers in the history of mankind. And they wrote a historical dictionary of the German language. And the reason they collected together those fairy tales was because they wanted to collect together German vocabulary from different places and different times and study the change in the meaning of words in different places and different times. The Grimm Brothers dictionary is available in published forms, around 20 volumes. It's also available online, a digital version. And I looked at the digital version, and the eighth definition of the word fi, the eighth definition given from the 17th century. In the 17th century, the word fi was used to mean Wildesvieh, bestiae ferae, wild animals, horses. In the 17th century, in the days of the Magen Avram, the word fi meant treif animals. So when the Magen Avram or any of the Meforshim, whether it's Rashi using old French words or any posek in any place in time, using the local language to explain what a Hebrew word means, one does not want to rely upon the modern current meaning of that non-Hebrew word, the Arabic word that the Rambam uses, or the French word that Rashi uses, or the Yiddish word that the Magen Avram uses. We don't want to rely upon the modern meaning. We want to go back and see how that word was used in that place and time when that author wrote it. Well, according to the Magen Avram, the bracha is to be omitted not only on shoes and leather garments made out of kosher animals, but also made out of treif animals, pigskin cloths, pigskin gloves, pigskin shoes. Well, I don't know whether they got a pigskin besides American footballs, but you omit the bracha because an animal had to be killed, and it doesn't matter whether the animal that had to be killed was kosher or treif. God's mercy pertains to all creatures. The Kaf HaChaim, the great Sephardic posek of Yerushalayim, Im kana beged me'orot shu'alim, if you buy a garment made out of wolf skin, wolf leather, then you do make shechianu. This is because it's not like the issue of shchita. In the issue of shchita, a Jew had to kill the animal with his own hands. That's the reason we omit the bracha on kosher and garments made out of kosher shechted animals. But if it's a non-kosher animal, a garment could have been made out of an animal which died by itself. No one had to kill it. Maybe the animal died by itself, and then the skin was taken off and made into leather, and not necessarily killing an animal if we're talking about a non-kosher animal. So we see there's a divergence of thought even amongst those who do make the bracha. There's divergence of thought about whether to make the bracha on leather or only leather from kosher shechted animals. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach wrote, Al begadim chashuvim noagim gam bizmanenu levarech. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach lived in the 20th century. He said people are making the bracha, but not on jewelry and not on shoes, even if they are important. So as far as the minhag is concerned, Rav Shlomo Zalman observed people, at least in his neighborhood, I suppose, making the bracha on clothing, but not on other things. As far as a new talis is concerned, put tzitzis on a talis, the Shulchan Aruch says, mivarech shechianu. Shulchan Aruch says to make a shechianu on a new talis. And if you did not make the bracha when you first saw the new talis, just like by a fruit, the bracha was originally intended for when you see the bracha, you can make the bracha when you put on the talis the first time. Let's finish with just two opinions. The Maharshag, the great rabbi of Lithuania 150 years ago, Lo berachti shechianu al levishat beged chabash deino chashuv etzli. I never make a bracha of shechianu because who cares whether I have new clothes or not? You know, if my wife says I need a new set of clothes, so she gets me a new set of clothes, but I really don't care. No bracha for me on a new set of clothes. The Or L'Tzion, Rav Ben Zion Abba Shaul, the great Rosh Yeshiva of Porat Yosef, Kana Bigdei Laila, if you buy pajamas. What about pajamas? Im Samech Behem, if you experience joy in your heart, you make the bracha. Now, this too is an interesting linguistic question. Bigdei Laila. If you think about it for a moment, the phrase Bigdei Laila, nighttime garments, appears nowhere in Torah, nowhere in the Mishnah, nowhere in the Gemara, nowhere in the Gaonim, nowhere in the Rishonim, nowhere in the Acharonim until very, very recently. Very recently means the 19th century. And the word pajama, where does the word pajama come from? Strange sounding word, isn't it? It's not from some Latin. There's no Greek word like that. The word pajama came into the English language in the days of the Raj, when the British Empire controlled India. When the British were in control of India, they noticed that the Indians had special garments which they wore at night when they were asleep, called in Hindi pajama. The idea that one has a special garment that you wear while sleeping is an idea which penetrated from Hindu practice in India to the British colonists. They brought it back to Europe, and now we have pajamas all over the Western world. This, of course, raises the question with what people wore before they started wearing pajamas. What did they wear when they went to sleep? And the answer to that question is very simple and straightforward. They wore nothing. People, while sleeping, wore nothing, which is why the Shulchan Aruch emphasizes that when you wake up in the morning, you should first get dressed under the sheet, under the blanket, before getting up, because in those days, when you're under the blanket, under the sheet, you were wearing nothing. We see how times have changed. Bottom line, as the Or L'Tzion, Reb Ben Zion Abba Shaul teaches us, if you have simcha on a new garment, and the question is, can you recite the bracha? The answer is absolutely yes. If the question is, what is the minhag? Are most people making the bracha? There are people who have the minhag, but the mainstream among the poskim seems to be to skip the bracha. With this, I'm going to pause and ask you if you have any questions that you wish to ask now.
Shalom, Rav Fink. Well, thank you.
Shalom. You're welcome. Okay.
It sounds like you were saying the minhag is not to, but how would that fit?
The most widespread minhag seems to be not to make the bracha, correct?
So how would that?
Because it's reshus, and people are not so sure whether it's correct or incorrect, so they omit it. It's not seasonal. Maybe that's a requirement. Maybe that's a requirement because of the suffix, and it's not being mandatory. People are omitting it.
But then there are people like you. You ended with the or let's
yes. There's plenty of room. After all, as they say, the reason to omit it is chalush, is weak, and if you do experience simcha, go for it.
So this really opens the blessing of Shechianu and Hatov Metiv to a lot of different areas if one relies upon the valid opinions that if it brings you simcha, that opens it up to shoes, truthfully undergarments, pajamas,
correct,
glasses.
Correct.
So
and for poor people, and for poor people, mistama more frequent than for rich people.
Right. And
it also
sounds like the ikar is not the value of the item, but the simcha that one is.
Simcha Salev. Like the Marashag said, I don't care. I was perfectly happy with the tattered garments I was wearing before. Just my wife insisted.
So those last two shoots really show the opposite ends.
Both sides, both poles,
wow.
both poles. That's why we quoted them, right? Both poles.
Wow.
Okay.
And it sounds like it has to be something that has to be used. So if someone purchased gold coins that they're going to store away and never use, they wouldn't use it. But if now, I guess the question comes to if someone was to take those. I heard a story of someone would take the gold coins and put it on their table in order to learn Torah with feeling the ashirut. Is that considered using them?
Yeah. Yes.
Interesting. Wow. Okay.
Okay.
Rav Fink.
Yes,
Sorry here.
Hi,
Your last, just at the very end, you said the person can say Shakianu on the talis, but beforehand you said on a mitzvah you don't say Shakianu on an object of mitzvah.
Correct. I said both of those things, and those things seem to contradict themselves. resolution is as follows. Although it is true that a talis is a mitzvah garment, it is also a garment. And the obligation, as it says in the Torah, al arba kanfot bigdeichem, if it's not a garment, if it's not going to be worn as a garment, the definition of garment in Halacha is something which protects the body either against the elements or against vision. That's the definition of a garment. In order to have the mitzvah of tzitzis, it must first be a garment which you are using as a garment, and only afterwards the mitzvah comes. So talis is probably the only example of a mitzvah object which must first be a kli tashmish. It must first be an object that you use, and therefore it gets the bracha.
Okay, and I'm also curious about jewelry. I mean, women are usually very excited about getting jewelry, like, and gives Simcha, and it's also one of those, minhagim to give your wife jewelry before for Yom Tov.
Let your ears hear what your mouth has said. Women are often excited about new jewelry. But who was it who wrote that new jewelry is not a source of simcha? It was a man. The men don't care about it. It's the women. If indeed you experience simcha, it's correct to make the bracha. Correct, but not obligatory.
Thank you.
And if
Okay.
somebody realizes they've had this item amongst them and they hadn't properly blessed on it, if it would fall under these categories, would they then look at it anew, and make a blessing on it?
No, it has to be at the beginning of use.
Okay.
So let us
And
pause with it. Yeah.
yeah, the idea of a mitzvah item that you'd wear, like if someone was an avelut, if someone bought a dress that they were planning to wear for Shabbat Kodesh, does that fall under the category? No,
Not
because
a
it's not
mitzvah,
for
right.
it's not
Right.
it's not for the purpose of a mitzvah.
Now, in order to complete the discussion of Shechianu, can I suggest for next week Shechianu on good tidings, on good news. That'll be for next week. Okay, that will be in Mi'at Hashem. I'll put together some sources for that. Until then,
And
I
then
wish you a good week. Yes.
last
Frank,
thing,
can we
it
say
sounds like
Shechianu when Mashiach comes?
Oh, indeed.
next week.
We
It
should be
sounds
prepared, right? But it's something, but
Correct.
it's communal. So what's going to be the bracha?
Tov native.
And if you hear it and you're in your house and you're by yourself,
so thank you.
Still, it's a communal event. It's for the whole community. It's not only for you.
so God willing, we will get to say it this week. You've prepared us for it.
Yeah.
Thank
It
you.
sounds like you uncovered the reason for Tidchadesh in modern Hebrew,
Nachon,
because that's what people say, like you should use it out and have a new one.
right?
Wow. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tov, have a good week and a safe week and a Shabbat
Thank
Shalom. And next week in Yirtzeh
And
Hashem, we'll talk about Shechianu on good news.
amen.
Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.